Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The EU Remain campaign had everything going for it. They had the endorsement of all the political parties. They had money from big business. They had £9 million worth of taxpayers' money for a propaganda sheet. They had the celebrity endorsements from the lovies, the actors and the singers, and one overpaid football commentator, and they had the churches and the charities. And they even managed to enlist the Treasury Department to carry out Project Fear, and still they couldn't win. The people of this country voted to leave. But they weren't satisfied, Mr. Speaker, because they then decided to deride and sneer at Leave voters, describing us as racist, xenophobic, bigoted little Englanders, too stupid to understand what it was that we were doing. And they did everything they could to undermine that result, trying to overthrow it in the High Courts, trying to thwart it in the unelected House of Lords, using one of the hereditary peers, using big businesses like Starbucks, I believe, announcing yesterday that they were going to support a second referendum, and now in this very chamber, using members of Parliament who are happy to stand on election manifestos, committing themselves to delivery of the referendum result. Now, it is true that this deal before us is not the one that those millions of us who voted to leave would actually have hoped for. But some of the blame for that lies with those members of Parliament who announced very loudly from day one of the negotiating process that Britain couldn't possibly leave the European Union without a deal. What sort of a negotiation process is it when people are saying that we can't actually walk out of the negotiating room? They suggested that Britain, with the fifth largest economy in the world, was unable to govern without the guiding hand of Juncker and others in the bloated bureaucracy in Brussels. And having made it harder to get that deal, to get a decent deal, they are now making it impossible for the Prime Minister by voting the whole thing down. And I don't believe, frankly, with some of these people, some of them who've sat as ministers in a Conservative government, who used the Whip's office to demand the loyalty of backbenchers when they were imposing rather questionable policies. Some of them, I have to say, rather second-rate ministers, in my opinion. But having made it much harder for the government and the Prime Minister, they now seek to vote the whole thing down, not because, Mr. Speaker, they want a second referendum or a Norway deal or something else, but because they don't want any kind of Brexit to take place at all. And they will, of course, be joined by principled, decent members of Parliament, like my friend behind me here, who will vote this down because they believe in Brexit and they believe that this deal isn't going to deliver. And all I would say, respectfully, to the friends of mine who I respect and admire who sit around in these benches is this: do they really want to be sharing the division lobby tomorrow with Conservative MPs who've done so much to thwart the will of the British public? Because nobody knows actually what is going to happen if and when this deal is voted down, this compromise deal, if it fails. What will happen then? Some people will say that we'll get a hard Brexit, which I would fully support, but others will be doing their very best to stop any form of Brexit happening. And all I can say, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm not a gambler, so I'll take the compromise that's there in front of me. It is time to settle this matter once and for all, but Britain did vote for leave and Brexit must happen.